All right. Well, thank you for joining us for the first workshop of 2025 for Grit. And I'm thrilled to have Amanda, who's going to be presenting on the remote workforce. So I'll go ahead and kick it to you. And obviously, feel free to take advantage of the chat to put any questions in that you have. And we're ready to get started.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I'm super excited to be talking about this topic today. I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. I am used to sharing in Teams, so I'm going to give this a good old college try and see what comes out on the other end here. Okay, so this presentation is not moving. Can you guys see just the presentation, or do you see my notes?
I see the presentation in your beautiful face, but I
Okay,
don't see your
perfect.
notes.
Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted. All right. So
Perfect.
this presentation is brought to you by Gadellnet. So I'll do a shameless plug for our organization. Gadellnet's an IT managed service provider. We help businesses from all ranges of sizes, from small, medium to large, um, with all things technology. We do monthly service provided. We provide monthly services, but then we also do project-based work as well. So if you're at all in the market for anything IT, feel free to give us a call. Actually, give Taryn a call. She is the know-all lady when it comes to Gadellnet. So what we'll be talking about today is combining leadership and technology and how we create a more empowered organization. Um, where we've seen a lot of this come into play is post-pandemic life, obviously, and obviously during the pandemic, we had a surge of need of remote workforce supplements. We went from working in an office every day to working behind screens every day. And a lot of that came in such a rush that we didn't have the capacity and capability to truly plan in a way that makes for our workforce to be as productive as they can be. So Taryn's going to hear a lot of this stuff that we do here at Gadellnet. And I thought it would be great for us to share some of that and those tools with everyone else, and in a way that might be meaningful for your teams as well. So just a little bit about Gadellnet. Currently, we have around 160 employees. We are a certified B Corporation, which means we have a very mission-driven focus on giving back to the communities that we serve. We are constantly nominated and awarded Best Place to Work for Denver, St. Louis, and Indianapolis markets. We offer services from, like I said, mainstream IT, provide IT services, but we're also paving the way in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and consulting projects. So there's not another business quite like Gadellnet. So excited to be a part of it. And I'm the CFO. I did have a chapter in Jen's most recent book, Living Well with Grit. I get to speak about the people that have helped me along the way to my success and all of the wonderful things that I've gotten to see throughout my life and career. You'll notice my chapter is a little different from most. I chose not to go down the path of sharing a lot of stories just because my children are quite young. And yes, I have been through a pretty difficult divorce, but it's not typically something that I like to put in writing and potentially impact them negatively. But I am a seasoned employee and a seasoned mother to difficult things in life. So it was an honor to be a part of that book. And if you haven't read it yet, I definitely encourage you to download and give it a read. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in organizational leadership. I am almost done. I've got 4.5 classes left, and then I go straight into dissertation, which is actually on this topic. So this is the first time I'm presenting on the topic, but I thought I'd test the waters a little bit and see where the impact and emphasis can be with this information, and where I'd like to take this as I move into dissertation phase is really look at the impact of fearlessly and courageously empowering teams and the impact of the financial piece of an organization. How can we take that leadership and make a difference for the profitability of an organization? That said, shameless plug here for Mentoring Monday. It is coming up. I believe it's at the end of February. I know there are a few GRIT members that are also participating as mentors in the event. But it's a wonderful event. It happens across the nation on the same day every year. And basically, a group of women get together and we do a speed dating style mentor session for women in the community on a single day. And we get to impact a handful of lives, but it's a wonderful event. So if you haven't heard of it and you're interested, reach out. I know there's a lot of LinkedIn posts, and St. Louis Business Journal puts that on every year. Okay, so the nitty gritty. The remote workforce is not something new. The actual term for remote work, like actually was telecommuting, was coined by a NASA scientist in 1973. So this is not a new concept. It's not something that we have only heard about since pandemic life, but IBM actually started it in 1979. They had 5 employees telecommute every day. And by 1983, they actually had 2,000 employees who were remote working. None of this is new stuff. This is all stuff that's been around for years. It's just evolving rapidly. So by 2003, we've started using tools like Skype and different types of video chatting. 2005, they started having co-working spaces where people from different environments, different fields, different industries could come and work in a single place. And by 2017, work from home was actually a trend in California, something that was not new even across to the West Coast. And then by 2020, of course, COVID hits and most of the world is working from home. And what that means, of course, when we talk about pandemic life and working from home, it was such a line in the sand. Everyone is packing up their workspaces and working from home. It didn't give us time to build that out in a lot of ways. Now, where Gadellnet is different, we were working from home pre-pandemic. So a lot of our systems were actually set up and in place to make working from home a lot easier, not only in 2020, but even now as we've evolved into the new norm of hybrid work is what most of our team members do. But a lot of our team members are fully remote and do work from all over the country and actually in other countries as well. So our talent pool is vast, but it also allows our employees a chance to really see the world. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about some statistics on remote work. You know, in the news, you see a lot of these bigger organizations who are returning to the office. Amazon is one that really comes to mind, but you see them sort of backing off in a way that makes you question if it's the right choice to implement a return to work policy. Personally, I feel like return to work policies can be rather rigid, especially in a world where employees have set their lives up in such a way to be able to work remotely, gotten rid of cars, changed how their children get taken to and from school, all of the things that go into making life work with your role. We changed so quickly to make sure we could continue working after pandemic hit that now that the pandemic's over, we're being expected to shift again. So one of the things that I think is important for us to really understand, especially as small and medium business owners, there is still a tremendous amount of value in working from home. In the US, 1 in 5 employees are working remotely, and 98% of our workforce wants some form of remote work, be it hybrid, be it all day remote. Some of them are more interested in 2 to 3 days in the office versus a full 5-day work week. And then 16% of companies in the US are fully remote, which is honestly a staggering number when you consider the fact that pandemic life is over and has been over for quite some time. And a lot of these organizations are still finding ways to be functional and profitable in an environment where their workforce is largely remote. We save the US workers an average of 55 minutes a day. Personally, I save about an hour and a half every day that I don't commute. So it's definitely meaningful when it comes to emissions. It's meaningful when it comes to the amount of money it takes our employees to commute to and from work every day. And it honestly, it allows for more productivity in that time that they've regained by not commuting. Remote work still ranks behind pay and career opportunities. So our employees are more interested in getting paid more. They're more interested in promotions than they are in the opportunity to work from home. That does not take the place for flexibility, and it does not take the place for the ability to continue education. So there's other pieces that play into that, but it's still third when it comes to what our employees want. So I'm going to pause here. I did see a chat. Is there a question? I can't see that part. Maybe I can.
Looks like Susan Duff said federal.
Federal. Yes.
Are you going
I
to say that?
did that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I did hear that.
sorry.
Is that something that they could potentially change back, or that was an executive order, wasn't it?
That was an executive order from the new president on his first day. Just a comment as you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to see how long that actually lasts. Because they don't think about the cost that it actually takes to have employees in office. So I'm very curious about that. That's a very strange order. It's a very strange muscle for a president to flex, in my opinion. But to stay away from the political side of things, you can obviously tell where my where my interests are. Any other questions? If not, I'll keep going. So, okay, remote work challenges. We all know that working from home has its absolutely wonderful benefits. As a mother, I'm here at my grandmother's house because my children are actually at home all day whenever I'm home working. So it's a nice, quiet environment for me because usually I get stopped every hour or so to grab someone a snack. So there's a benefit to them having mom home all day long. But we also have some drawbacks. And one of the major things that we've seen at Gadellnet is the inability to build meaningful relationships. And our employees are actually saying that. So 43% of employees state that it's easier to build relationships with their team members online, which means the bulk of the other half have a really difficult time doing that. And it's understandable. It's very difficult to connect with someone through a camera. The other piece, and I will happily admit I fall victim to this, is burnout. 69%, which is staggering when you consider the amount of people that is. 69% of our workforce feels burnt out from the amount of mental fatigue that they have from working online. Those boundaries get very blurred when it comes to online work. Your ability to cut off work once you leave whatever office that you have at home is very difficult. And so what we see is our employees just working themselves to the point of exhaustion. The one thing I will say that is a very interesting number to consider is only 5% of our workforce is looking for full-time in-office work. And a lot of that is the younger generation in their early 20s looking for that full-time in-office work. And I personally feel like one of the biggest reasons for that is to build those relationships, to build their careers and help get them what they're looking for out of their role. And I think that what's important for us as leaders in the organization is making sure that we find ways to continue to give that even in a workforce that's working remotely, which we'll cover here in a couple slides. So the remote leader is just as important, if not more important, to have these leadership qualities when you are a remote leader versus an in-office leader. You're dealing with employees who have some serious things going on in their lives or have extreme life-changing events, divorce, separation. We had one employee this year who had her entire house flood from cold weather, just different things that happen that when someone is with you every day, you feel differently than you do when you're states apart. My team is in Indianapolis, and when something happens with them, it's very hard for me to connect the feeling that they have when we're only talking through a camera versus in person. There's a lot of social cues that you miss when you're talking through a camera versus in person. Silos are every organization has a silo, if not multiple silos, but they're even more prevalent in remote work just because you're disconnected from those other teams. Isolation obviously happens. You're in your home. There's days where if I'm working from home, I don't leave the house at all throughout the day. Sometimes several days other than to take my children to school. And then FaceTime, not the app FaceTime, but the lack of in-person communication and the ability to build those meaningful relationships are some of the biggest challenges that remote leaders face right now. So what do we do to combat that? There's a lot of tools for the remote leader, but I think what's important are these 4 specific topics. Building mentorship programs that actively cross barriers and cross bounds within the organization that go from one department to another or one executive to an entry-level employee across departmental lines. Meeting management, get rid of meetings that should have been in email. Make sure that that time that you have built out of your schedule is meaningful. Collaboration days are something that organizations across the country, especially bigger organizations, are using frequently, and we can talk about those later on. And then radical candor is something that I think a lot of us do, especially as women who are empowered. Radical candor is something that is super critical when it comes to building ties and relationships with your teams through a camera. And we'll talk about each of these individually here in the next slides. So mentorship programs are actually not crazy difficult to build, but they're super easy to get wrong. What you want is a robust program that can impact every type of employee in your organization, no matter how far apart they are. Once your plan's created, execution is just as critical as getting the plan right so you can gain the traction that you need to keep the impact going throughout your organization and over time. So we've actually got a new mentorship program launching right now at Gadellnet. It's actually going on, gosh, Taryn, like right now, I think is when it starts. But there is still an area for growth for us as an organization, even as we develop our own internal mentorship program. And not to spill some insight to Taryn, but there is one that we have built, and some of those steps in all of that are on the next slide as well. But the program itself is such an important piece that getting it right and documenting it correctly is going to be key to the success of the program. So mentorship program things. They should have designated start and stop meetings, SMART goals. They should benefit both the mentor and the mentee. There should be a dictated frequency, and there should be a matching process to make sure that you align the appropriate mentor with the appropriate mentee. Now, this is speaking to an employer-based mentorship program. Of course, a lot of us are mentors when it comes to individual relationships that we have, but this is talking about building one that you use for your teams. So let's talk in depth a little bit about each of these. The designated start and stop meetings are built and best held in person if you can do that. If not, you can do them remotely. Use technology such as Microsoft Teams is one of my favorites, but Zoom is also an option just like this. And using an app like Microsoft Copilot or any other note-taking app is super helpful as you get into conversations, because as all of us know, we start to get into these conversations and we lose track of note-taking, and then we end the conversation and no one has an action item. So there are a lot of note-taking apps out there. I'm privy to Microsoft Copilot just because we are a Microsoft partner. If you're interested in a note-taking app, I'm sure you could chat with Taryn and she could help you with licensing for Microsoft Copilot and Teams as well. So the initial meeting of your mentorship program should consist of outlining SMART goals. And these should be SMART goals, not just for your mentee, but also for your mentor. They should be beneficial meetings for both your mentor and your mentee. We should have specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals set for each of our individuals that take place in these meetings. Your goal is to have no more than 3 goals per mentorship period, which would ideally last around 6 months. We have mentorship periods that can occasionally last about a year or so, but ideally you want smaller spurts like the 6-month period. You could even do a 3-month brief mentorship if you have an employee who's struggling or on a PIP that might need an executive or a leadership team member to come in and help coach them through that process of performance improvement. You're going to want to designate the frequency of those recurring meetings in that designated start meeting. Ideally, you're meeting consistently weekly and for about an hour or so each week. So this is a little time consuming, but again, critical in making sure that you have the support you need from your team. Weekly meetings should track those SMART goals and the progress that you make towards those SMART goals. There are a lot of tools out there when it comes to tracking what we call rocks in our organization. We use the EOS model for tracking initiatives. Some people call them sprint goals. Some people just call them initiatives. It doesn't matter the name. They all have the same purpose and outcome. There are plenty of tools to use to track SMART goals. We currently are moving everything of ours into an application called 15.5, and you'll hear me talk about that throughout the rest of the presentation. It's actually a wonderful platform. It provides a place to track initiatives like this and organizational initiatives. So you can track individual goals, but then you can track goals for the company as well in the same platform. That same tool is also able to be used for performance management. You can use it for sharing wins across the organization or shouting out a win for an individual in the organization to the company at large. A lot of these tools have integrations. So if you have a payroll platform that you use to pay your employees, it can pull all that nuanced information out of your payroll platform and push it into these tools like 15.5 to give you a stream, like a seamless application that you can use to track certain things. So if you're interested in anything like that, again, Taryn's your gal. Matching mentors and mentees is something that is incredibly difficult, but can also be incredibly fruitful. If you have an employee who's struggling with what they want to do next in their life with their career or their education, pair them with someone who is actively pursuing a degree or recently pursued a degree while working at your organization. There's definitely key ways to make sure you do your due diligence to make sure that the pair can be as impactful as possible. One tool that we use at Gadellnet that helps us identify personalities is Predictive Index. It's a great tool. It asks like 2 questions and it helps map out personalities crazily accurately. It's insane how it's literally 2 questions. You fill in bubbles and it spits out the horoscope of horoscopes for your personality index. So Predictive Index is a great tool. It's something that you can quickly implement at your organization. And to be honest with you, Gadellnet does a lot of the Predictive Index in the hiring process as well. So we can help filter different personalities based on role types. But it works great here too. I'm going to pause. Does anyone have any questions about mentorship programs or what you can do to implement one at your organization or anything that I can answer there? No? Okay. We'll close that chat. All right. Meeting management. This is one of my biggest bugaboos as a leader in any organization. At any given day, I have roughly 7 to 10 meetings. And I'm the finance lead. So 7 to 10 meetings means I get very little tactical work done. Or it means that I have to miss a practice or I have to miss something going on in the evening because I have to work and get caught up on the things that are critical for me to stay on pace to finish my job. Your meeting time should be sacred. What a lot of us do, and I'm very guilty of it, but I'm trying to get better about it, is we book focus time in our calendars. And what I mean by that is in your Outlook or in your G calendar, whatever Google calls their calendar, you block 2 hours of time to get work done. But what ends up happening is people will pop in on that focus time, or, hey, I know you're focusing right now, but can you help me with this? And I challenge you to try to do the inverse. Block out specific times in your calendar that is strictly meant for meetings only. So I know that this time on Tuesday, I'm doing meetings that day. I'm not doing anything else. What that also tells me is in a hybrid model, that's the day I'm probably going to want to work from home. Because when I go into the office, I want to be present for my team. I want to be there for anyone that wants to have a conversation. I don't want to be in the office with my door shut for 5 or 6 hours of the day because I'm in calls. So I think it's a non-traditional way to look at it, but I think it's also very empowering to be able to specifically call out when you're going to be behind a screen for very long periods of time. The other piece of this is, and I am the worst at it, today being one of those days, make sure you block time to take a break. I sit behind the screen for hours on end, and my husband will come in if I'm working from home and he'll say, "Are you going to stop at any point today?" And there's days where I can't. There's no way. It makes no sense. But it's almost my own fault because I don't block that time for myself. And what you have to do is just be bullishly committed to your mental well-being when it comes to meeting management and time management. I love using Microsoft Outlook to schedule my one-on-ones, to schedule team meetings. I am incredibly overbooked with a lot of meetings that could have been an email. And I think it's super important to call it what it is when that does occur. When you are out of the office, and again, I am terrible at this. I have spent maternity leaves working the entire time. Gadellnet is the first maternity leave that I've ever had that I did not spend the entire time working, and I am incredibly thankful for that. But I am the number one worst person that works during maternity leaves. And I won't say that I didn't work this last maternity leave. I definitely did, but it was work on my own time. Our CEO and I are quite close, and I probably overshare with that man more than I should. I definitely do. But it never felt forced or like I had to do anything. So it was very different from previous maternity leaves. But again, protecting that sacred time is a very big part of how you can be a stronger leader. If you are giving away your time like Skittles, then what time you do have for yourself and for your individual team members that you actually are leading becomes so strained and so off course that you will not be as impactful of a leader. Whew. 15.5, back to 15.5. It's a great place to document talking points for one-on-ones. If you aren't doing one-on-ones with your direct reports, I highly encourage them at whatever frequency works best for you and your schedule. But 15.5 is a tool that you can use to throughout the week, as you wait to get to that next one-on-one point, you can toss talking points into that space instead of pinging them on Teams and saying, "Hey, what happened here?" You can toss it into 15.5. So A, they know that it's coming in their next one-on-one when they check 15.5, but B, you're not distracting them. We don't want to be that constant ping that pops up because all that reads off as is my question is more important than your focus to the task that you're doing. And it's become far too easy for us to interrupt each other as opposed to having to get up and walk to the next office, or for Gadellnet's case, walk 2 buildings over and talk to each other. So Teams is a great tool, but it can also hurt, and implementing a different tool like 15.5 is a great way to help keep your thoughts in one place versus your thoughts becoming a detractor from the current work that's being done. The 15.5 tool is also, like I said, a great place to track the SMART goals that you make for mentorship, but also a great way to track organizational goals. So if you have a goal to introduce a certain product line, you're able to do that in 15.5, put that goal in there and track progress. Taryn's got her hand raised. She's probably got a great point.
I was just going to tell you, your slides are not coming. You're still on meeting management if you're moving.
I'm still talking about meeting
Okay.
management,
I didn't
Taryn.
know if you had one on 15.5.
I don't have one on 15.5, but maybe I should add one to this because I feel like we stopped using 15.5 at Gadellnet. I was a very big anti 15.5er for a while, but now that we've gotten better at tracking our goals, I'm all in on 15.5, man. I think it's a great way for us to keep from distracting each other in our day-to-day. So
and I will agree with you. It is very easy with teams to distract. I am absolutely guilty where I just ping people because I'm going a million miles an hour, but so what is everyone else in the organization?
I'm such a pinger and I'm terrible about it. And Taryn, I'm sure I ping you all the time because it's so easy, but you don't realize like that can be such a distraction. I have my do not disturb on right now, but you know how infrequently I put that on? It is rare and I should use it more. So yes, this is meeting management / shameless plug for 15.5. I get no credit for promoting 15.5 right now, but maybe I should get some credit for that.
Joni, you said you hadn't seen 15.5. It's pretty good, especially if you have multiple people responding to you. So it's a check-in I do with my boss, and then like the people that report to me. It kind of talks about 3 things that you were supposed to accomplish this week. You update those 3 things, and then it asks you what 3 things do you want to accomplish next week. Also kind of ask you, depending on what the manager says, how are you feeling? Is there anything that you'd like to add? And my boss usually puts what was something that, caused you joy this week or something like that. So it's a touch to kind of make sure you're consistently getting things done that you plan to get done. And then, what's planned for the next week. So it keeps you on target of a constant communication with them. And then it helps you to say, oh, did I not get those 3 things done? Sometimes they get pushed, but I really like it because I consistently know where people are that are reporting to me, and then, the same. So when I get on my one-on-ones with Ashley, who is my boss, she already knows what I want to talk about, or if something got lost, like if we lost an opportunity, we report that. So it's not a surprise to her. She's talking to the executive team. So it's a great communication tool.
And it keeps us on task. It really, we haven't done it for a year. We dropped it for about a year. And in that time, I have felt a little blind when it comes to the work that my team's doing on a weekly basis. I check in with my team daily. I have constant contact with both my direct reports, but I feel like I've lost track of all of the nuanced things that they're doing throughout the week. And not that I want to micromanage, that's absolutely not the point of this. But when it comes down to our one-on-one time, it almost feels like, felt, because now we're back in it, it almost felt like we didn't have the topics of conversation that we needed to help move us forward. Now, Taryn's team kept doing check-ins during that time because they were that meaningful through 15.5. And I'm really glad you guys kept at it because I feel like it's really made a difference in making sure your meetings were impactful. And that's really the point of all of this is if you're going to take that time away from your day, boy, it better be meaningful. And tools to help make that more meaningful time are very valuable. Okay, collaboration days. This was something that I had heard of at a conference that I went to last year. Collaboration days are actually something that organizations do across the country. This was a specific instance that Blue Cross Blue Shield's CFO came to one of our conferences and talked about how they will not do a return to work policy, but they will do collaboration days. And if you're unable to make a collaboration day, there better be a pretty good reason why you can't make it. But these are in-person days that are not necessarily built out in an agenda. It's not necessarily time to meet and discuss team goals. It's more about growing the company. It's more about giving the 22 to 24-year-olds who are looking for in-office work an opportunity to meet the person behind the camera. These collaboration days don't even have to be work focused. They don't even have to be in the office. It's really a day to get together and build relationships. The frequency that Blue Cross Blue Shield as of last year was doing, was on gosh, it wasn't last year. It was the year before. I had a baby last year. That year is gone. It was 2023. They were doing them once a month. Whatever frequency works for you, I think is totally fine. But I think if you get past that quarterly recurring time frame, you're losing the impact. So highly recommend collaboration days. I personally travel to Indianapolis once a quarter intentionally, so I can make sure I spend time with my team. Unfortunately, that's the most I can get to Indianapolis, but I do with intention schedule that time to make sure that we can get together and I can spend time talking about them. I don't have an interest in necessarily getting together with that team and spending a lot of time talking about where we're going as a finance group. We do, of course, we spend a small portion of our time doing that, and that's usually planned and documented with an agenda. But the rest of the time that we spend together is often, hey, let's go grab some food, or they want to. I am going to Indianapolis in 2 weeks, and they want to. Taryn, you're gonna love this, and you're gonna want to come to Indy. They want to book a rage room, and I've never. This is
I'm
so
down.
so not me. But I'm very excited to see what they've come up with, because apparently there's one in Indianapolis and that's what they want to do. But yes, Casey, I love going to Indy. It's one of my favorite drives. It's very short. And I'm super excited to, when I go in February, we are opening our new office in Indianapolis. So we're moving from, they're both in Carmel actually, but our new office is opening in, what is that? What is that complex? It's Lakefront in Carmel. So yes, that is one of my favorite trips. I have yet to see our Denver office, and I don't know if maybe I share too much with our CEO, Brad, that he doesn't want to deal with me in person there, but I would like to get to Denver this year if I can. So collaboration days are important, definitely a part of building your workforce, but also an important way to make sure that your team sees who you are as a person and not just someone behind a camera. This is one of my favorite books, guys, Radical Candor. I don't know if you've read it, but if you haven't, you should. I love Simon Sinek. If you don't follow him, I encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn. He posts stuff all the time. And a lot of his quotes just hit me right between the eyes. It's a strong leader that allows people to see when they're weak. One of the most difficult times of my life was going through my divorce, of course. And I never shied away from being honest about how I felt, or finding a way to give myself the grace and the space that I needed. And one of the most meaningful tools that I received as a mentee was from Crystal Officer, who of course is a GRIT member, but she's also the CEO of Beverly Farm. So I reported directly to her. But one of the things she said to me was, when I know I'm not my best, when I know I'm not at my best, that it's okay for me to give myself the grace and the space to go and be that way somewhere else. There was one day where I had a pretty heated discussion with human resources, and I'm not proud of things that I say all of the time, but there was a conversation that occurred where I was attacked. And I was so upset, I just immediately got in the car and I drove home. And I texted Crystal and I said, I am not at my best. I am going home. At that point, I knew I would do more harm than good. But that very clear perception and honesty with myself allowed me to not only have radical candor with Crystal in the conversation that I had where I described what occurred, but the radical candor in my own head was so impactful on that situation that I was able to give myself the space to feel the feelings that I was feeling, because they were valid. And I absolutely had every right to feel the way that I felt, but then also to come past them and make decisions with the clear head. One of the biggest tools that I've given my team as I've led them is asking them to sleep on something. And they hear me say it all the time, probably too often. And Brad hears me say it all the time. He'll send me an email and say, what do you think of this? And I'll say, I think you need to sleep on it. And I think a lot of the times it helps with that knee-jerk reaction that can often be more emotionally charged than we intend it to be, especially after we've given ourselves the space and the grace to take our time away from that. But what I never want to do is encourage paving over the true feeling that you have. I think it should be, you use radical candor in a way that takes the emotional charge out of it, but still gives the same message in a clear way. People will be more receptive to that message if it's less emotionally charged. So one of the things that we do at Gadellnet, and again, another shameless plug for tools, but surveying your employees is so critical. We do it all the time at Gadellnet, but what we've recently done is gotten better at collecting that data and using it in a meaningful way. There are lots of survey tools out there. They can be automated. You don't even have to come up with questions yourself, but we typically come up with questions that we are finding to be impactful for our teams. But Tiny Pulse is currently the survey tool that we use. We are going to be moving to 15.5 to do our surveying in the future, likely this year sometime. It's super critical to get that feedback from your teams, and you'll find that they will be radically candid with you. What you have to be as a leader in the organization is ready to hear it and ready to do something with that information. We launched a survey yesterday, and we got, within the first hour, we got like 15 to 20 responses. That's pretty normal. And the first 2 responses were awesome. It felt good to hear it. It was so great. It was just positively glowing remarks on how we've operated as a business recently. But then you got to the next couple of comments, and they were hard to read. It was difficult to hear someone be that honest with us in work that we've put a lot of time and effort into. But if you read it from a different lens, you can look at it and understand that feedback from your teams, as candid as it is, can identify gaps in the organization that you didn't even realize were there. And in this case, it was, how do you feel about our strategic plan? And how do you feel like you can make an impact with that strategic plan? And the feedback was that I'm too low in the organization to make an impact. Well, I know that's not true. I'm sure Taryn knows that's not true. Every member of our organization can make an impact on our strategic plan, but we as an executive and leadership team have maybe not hit the mark on making sure our teams can understand what they truly can do to make an impact at their level. So survey tools are super helpful, but encouraging your teams to be radically candid in those surveys is even more impactful and meaningful when it comes to evaluating the results and then implementing the actions that come from those surveys. So if you don't have a survey tool and you are in a position to get one, I highly recommend it. Getting that information from your teams is just uber critical. One of the things that we've been able to utilize as we've shifted how we do this feedback is find an unbiased owner. Find someone who has really nothing to gain or nothing to lose from the feedback. I currently own our survey tool. I'm very radically candid, so I don't really care what the results say. I just think that we need to do a better job of disseminating them. So I've owned it for now until I can find someone to take it over. But one thing that I've learned is there can be so much data to analyze and so much bias that you're just unaware of, that using AI to analyze your results of your survey can help remove that bias and then provide transparent and pointed action items. So what I typically do is I'll export our findings into an Excel spreadsheet and I'll put it in ChatGPT. As much as my finance brain tells me don't put anything into ChatGPT, but ChatGPT will spit out an entire action plan for all of the findings. And then I can take a survey that took me 2 minutes to upload and 2 minutes to put into ChatGPT, and I've got action items for how to make my organization better in no time at all. So it just allows, that technology piece allows you to quickly find results based on what your organization is saying. Because let's be honest, we know that there's individuals in every organization that have nothing nice to say ever, but most of that feedback is honest and radical and should be used. So find a tool. and do it. It provides limitless information about your organization and will definitely elevate you as a leader to the next level. Okay. The other thing that I am adding, and I added it to the wrong slide here, is over communication. Over communication is something that in every study I've read so far as I've delved into the land of remote workforce is you cannot communicate too much when it comes to leading a remote workforce. Obviously, pinging people on Teams all day long is not the result that you are really looking for, but being that authentic leader, being honest when things are just not the way they should be, or being honest with your team and saying, "Hey, I'm mentally just not where I should be today. Let's tackle that tomorrow." Being honest with them in a way that makes them feel like it's okay for them to feel that way too is a different level of leadership that does translate through a camera. Authenticity will always translate through a camera, and being that type of leader is what your teams are really truly looking for. So empower them in that way. Allow them to feel that they can tell you when they're having a rough go at life, or have them look to you to give them advice in meaningful ways. And that's the way that they will give themselves the grace that you know that they deserve and that they've earned, and it will allow them to grow and thrive in that remote environment. The one piece of this that I want to make sure that everyone understands, and I should have brought it up in the meeting piece, but I think I 15-5'd that whole slide to death. But one of the key things that I've learned in my doctoral studies is there is emotional intelligence, and then there is the piece of there's the piece of working with a very diverse workforce, especially as you bring remote workers into your life. You're going to hire all kinds of different people. It's not just people from Southern Illinois who grew up on a farm. It's people from all over the country who have different diverse backgrounds, different cultures, but that cultural awareness and appreciation is so critical. There is nothing that grinds my gears more than when someone who doesn't understand that it's Christmas and we don't send emails on Christmas. It's Thanksgiving and we don't send emails on Thanksgiving. Or this person is on the East Coast and this person's on the West Coast. So you asking them to have this by end of day when their day was already over 2 hours ago is way more work than anyone anticipates when they take on a remote role. So be aware of those time zones, but also, man, appreciate culture, have an awareness for culture, and be protective, be feverishly protective of that time for your teams because they will appreciate the heck out of it. And I know I personally appreciate the heck out of it when somebody comes to my aid when I say, hey, it's 6 o'clock and they sent me this just now. And I've got basketball and somebody has to cook dinner. And by the way, somebody needs to put 4 kids to bed and do their homework with them. So that means the world to my team. So that's it. I've talked a lot here, but basically there's a lot of tools out there for us to advance how we lead these workforces remotely. Find one that works for you, but boy, there's a lot out there. And if you're not sure which one might work, give us a call. We're happy to talk it over. If you're scared to implement it yourself, give Taryn a call. She'll happily help coach you through what we at Gadellnet could do even to help implement a tool for you, or if your network or your infrastructure is set up for it or not. We can also help give you some guidance in making sure that you're making the best decisions there as well. So use the tools to your advantage. And if you haven't revisited it since pandemic, boy, take a look at how you're managing because your productivity could not only increase, but your mental well-being and sanity could definitely benefit from some of this stuff. So I appreciate you guys giving me your ear for almost 50 minutes. I talked a lot. I'm sorry. Do you guys have any questions?
No sorries. That was outstanding. Feel free to unmute and ask any questions if anybody has any questions for Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Yeah.
My name's Amanda also. Sorry, I don't know how to put up my hand on Zoom. Like, I feel like Teams, I'm a master, but Zoom is something
Yes.
totally different. So, my world is actually multi-unit. So while it may not be remote, I feel like I really related to a lot of what you're talking about because, multi-unit, you're not touching base with your teams, unless you're traveling to their store and on a
Yeah.
regular basis. So I really appreciate your tips. I think, in our organization, we look at things like SMART goals and stuff like that. And we've done a lot of digging into radical candor. So I think for sure, for those that haven't had the experience with it yet, it's a great leadership tool. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. I definitely took a list of notes for things that I can help too with when you're not working side by side with your team on a daily basis. Like, you have to be so planful about what that conversation looks like and super intentional. So I just want to say thank you. I really resonated with your topic.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And that's one thing that I've always been a giver to a fault in a lot of ways, but having that time to I have work anniversaries on my calendar. I have birthdays on my calendar. And when I was on maternity leave, before I went on maternity leave, I ordered flowers for my team members that had birthdays while I was gone. And just that intentional piece that maybe gets missed because you are working remotely. I make sure that all of that is planned in a way that I can still be there for them no matter what. So yes, intention is a big part of being a strong remote leader, or in your case, just leading different teams from all over the place. Anybody else?
Great presentation, Amanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said, I haven't presented on this topic yet, but I've read a lot of case studies, probably over 100 at this point, getting ready to go into dissertation phase. So my repository is full of documentation. So it was great to put it on paper, and it's great to see the tools that we use at Gadellnet being so meaningful when it comes to the type of work that I'm researching.
Amanda, you may have already found this. Dr. Rick Nemenek, who's here in St. Louis, he's an IO psychologist, has written the book, The Mentor's Way, and he sets up mentoring programs for Bayer, Old Monsanto, some of the other huge organizations in St. Louis. So if you've not found that yet for your research for your PhD, it might be something you want to grab and look at.
Thank you. I will get on Amazon as soon as I'm done and find that. I appreciate that.
In fact, he leads the mentor program for the St. Louis Organization Development Network, and offers that. But yeah, the Mentor's Way is out there on Amazon. It's not that expensive, but it's somebody maybe you even want to link with. It's Rick, R.I.K. Nemenek, and he's local, and I'm sure he'd be glad to talk to you about what you're researching and looking at, because obviously he did a lot of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely will look him up on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, Joni knows him as well because she's very active in the St. Louis ODN. So
awesome.
Yeah, I just talked with him last week about we're in the process of nominating our mentor program, which has been around for 15 years, for Focus St. Louis What's Right with the Region Award, which is not easy to say.
Yeah.
I had a dentist appointment and came in late. What was the first point in your presentation? Like item number one?
The first thing we talked about was really just the history of remote work and how it started. And, a lot of people think it's a new concept or relatively a pandemic related outcome. It's not. It's been around since 1973, I think is the original date. And IBM is the first company that started doing it. And it's not a new concept.
New.
And if you need an introduction to Rick, Joni or I would be happy to connect the two of you, because we both know
appreciate that.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you again, Amanda. This was a great session. I did record this, so Joni, you can go to the Grit YouTube station and watch the beginning if you need to. Thank you for taking your time to visit and support Amanda with this presentation. And our next Grit event is going to be next week, Wednesday, for our DePere luncheon at the lodge at 11:30. So I hope to see many of you there. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jennifer. If any of you guys want to connect, I'm on LinkedIn, or I think Jennifer sent my bio out with this presentation too. Or find me on Gadellnet's website. You can email me.
I did. In the email, it's actually a link directly to her LinkedIn. So just go ahead and connect
Perfect.
with Amanda. So, all right. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye.
guys.